سبب دعوتنا لحضرته اليوم لأنه هو داعم كبير لفلسطين، يدعم فلسطين من خلال فيديوهات كثيرة كوميدية بيدعم فيها القضية الفلسطينية. Hello, Teg. Welcome to our show today.
Thank
I would like to thank you very much for being with us
thank you
today.
so much.
You're welcome. So, Teg Heyki, he's an Irish actor and comedian. We are very lucky to host him today, and the reason for inviting him because he's a big supporter for Palestine and the Palestinian case. We would like to understand more today about his support for Palestine through his comedy. Let's go with our first question. So, كيف بدأت في مجال الكوميديا ولماذا اخترتها كمهنة? So how did you start doing comedy, and why did you choose it as a job?
I don't know that I even choose it as a job, really. It's like because there's not much money involved in it at the start, as you probably know. But I think in school I just had a kind of sense that being the funny guy was going to keep you out of trouble, you know. So if you could be funny, you could get the better of teachers, and you could get bullies off your back. So I know, like, Stephen Fry has talked about effectively using comedy to get the school bullies away from him, like, you know, in his own inimitable way. So I definitely identify with that. So at the start, it was just something that I was aware that I was kind of reasonably good at in school, where everyone's trying to find something that they're handy at, so that they can kind of protect themselves. So that's probably where it started, I think.
Yeah, no, that's actually a very good idea, and I did hear it before, and I guess it works. Yeah. And as you probably know, most of us end up doing something they didn't want to do, or they didn't think about doing.
Yeah.
So let's speak about the type of comedy. Like, what's your funny style like, and which topics do you like to joke about more?
Well, it's funny, when I started out in my career, I suppose I did some stuff with our national broadcaster here in Ireland, and back then it was just about observational comedy, just stuff that I found funny. It would be surreal stuff. I had a comedy troupe, but we never did anything political, because I feel like in the south of Ireland there's not that much of an appetite for political comedy, but that would have been the type of comedy that I was most attracted to. So as my career developed and things happened such as COVID, and it felt like the world was kind of collapsing, I felt I might as well, somewhere along the line, I went on a personal journey, I suppose, but somewhere along the line, I felt that I should just do the type of comedy that I really wanted to do. So a few years ago, I pivoted and tried to match two passions in my life. One is comedy, and one is politics, geopolitics, colonialism, history. And I thought, well, what if I could get these two things together? So I think for the last few years, I would see myself more as a satirist than a kind of a comedian, you know.
Yeah, that's really nice. هلا بدي أسأل عن دعمه لفلسطين. Okay, so what, let's say, okay, why do you support Palestine, and what initiated your support to it, and what made you express your views through, as you said, through your comedy?
I mean, because I'm an Irish Republican, and so my views and my politics have always been that a national struggle for liberation is, well, first of all, it's been decreed that it's okay by international law, but also it's a righteous pursuit for liberation and freedom. And I support my own country's quest for independence and liberation, and decolonization from Britain. And I see the Irish Republican struggle as an internationalist struggle. So literature that I've read and the people that I kind of hang out with and support would always have seen Irish Republicanism in an international context. So we would identify with the struggles in Cuba, in Latin America, in Africa, and of course in the Middle East. So Palestine has always been in the front, I think, of people's minds if they're from an Irish Republican background. So it wasn't a new thing. But to answer your question on comedy, a few years ago, I think it was in 2021, it's hard to keep up on. There's been so many attacks on Gaza. It was during an attack on Gaza. I think it was in early 2021. I did a video, because I'd been doing political sketches at the time, and I did a video that just, I hope, kind of encapsulated the nature of the occupation and how utterly unfair it is. And I found with satire, particularly when you're able to make a supposedly difficult political situation really simple and really banal into like a house share. So that's the
Yeah.
analogy I used. It can be very, very effective. So
Mhm.
that sketch went super viral, and I launched a fundraiser as part of it, and it raised a certain amount of cash for the IADA campo I'm in regular touch with. So I think after that, when I saw the power that the satire can have, for a long time I'm making comedy, and you're kind of going, well, what does it really matter? You make someone laugh, you don't make someone else laugh. I mean, who cares really?
Yeah.
But at that point, I was like, well, actually, there is a utility to this outside of just making jokes. And I think I kind of became radicalized by my own sketches then at that point, that I could have that effect potentially, you know? So, yeah.
No, it's really amazing that you're using your comedy and your passion to deliver a noble case, um, and to spread the awareness about it. Can I ask you, did you before 2021, did you have the full understanding of what's actually going on in Palestine?
I mean, like, I feel like I had a better grasp of it than the average person, and I hope I'm not being egotistical when I say that. But again, to repeat the Irish Republican thing, I mean, like I have friends who some of them are in their 70s now, and they would have been in British prisons
Yeah.
because they would have played a role in Ireland's liberation from Britain, and in prison they would read voraciously. So I've kind of been friendly with people who would have like an exceptional understanding of
Mhm.
colonial struggles around the world, from Algeria to the Middle East, as I say, to Africa. And so I was always aware. But I mean, when you start reading, I would always read a lot to prepare to do a sketch, because inevitably when you make a sketch, you're going to get people saying, no, this is all wrong.
Mhm.
You're an anti-Semite, you're depicting the thing so wrong. So I try to read as much as I can to defend myself if I need to
Mhm.
from a reasonable attack. Now, a lot of the attacks are unreasonable, as you know, but if somebody's got a reasonable point, I like to be able to back up the fact that I've done the research. But I suppose it's probably in the last maybe 2 or 3 years, all right, that because I've ended up having, which is a wonderful thing, I've ended up making Palestinian friends in Ireland. I have got Palestinian friends in Cork, and I've got Palestinian friends in Dublin, and through no fault of their own, they talk about
Mhm.
Palestine and its occupation a lot,
Yeah. Yeah.
because it's at the front of their mind. So I probably learned from people more than I've learned from books.
Mhm.
But one thing I would say on that, though, is that you learn more information about the details and the person and the people involved, the personalities involved, but actually it's not complicated in
It's
the
not
way that
absolutely.
the Israel lobby will try to
Mhm.
mislead you into thinking that it's complicated. It's actually one of the most straightforward
Yeah.
conflicts in modern times, in my opinion. But yeah.
Absolutely. This actually was my next question, but I'm gonna say in Arabic first. القضية الفلسطينية كتير غير معقدة قبل مثل ما حضرتك ذكرت. بس زي ما قلت الكل بيشوفها قضية، والهيدك دائما أو العنوان الرئيسي هو القضية المعقدة. I just wanted to say that, as you mentioned, always the heading about the Palestinian case, the complicated case. It's too complicated. But the video I've seen for you as well, you actually expressed how basic it is. It's just as simple as you expressed it to be. So yeah, how long did it take you to see that it's actually not that complicated, and you were able to express that on your video?
I think if you put it in the context of, if you put the struggle in the context of all other settler colonial
Yeah.
projects, I mean, I don't think anybody's going around saying the French occupation of Algeria is extremely complicated. Like, I don't really remember anyone saying that. I don't even remember people saying the original, whatever about the 6 counties, which did ultimately become complicated, but the original British colonial campaign in Ireland. It's not complicated. Like, it's one group of people seeing themselves as ethnically superior to another, so they go and take over the land, and they ethnically cleanse the people who have been living there. It's
Yeah.
very, very straightforward. But I think, as you know, one of the powerful tools of the Israeli lobby is to try and push you and I outside of the conversation. Um,
Absolutely.
they make it seem like you and I wouldn't really understand it, because the fine points, they're just too nuanced. So I think one of the great uses of satire is that it undoes that type of propaganda, because if you
Mhm.
can represent it really simply,
Yeah.
then people will see, okay, I've been lied to here.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's go to the next question. So, كيف تضمن إنه جمهورك جمهورك الكوميدي ما بيستاء من وجهة نظرك؟ How do you make sure your audience understand your comedy about Palestine and without causing any offenses?
Well, I don't worry that much about causing offense, because I like to do my research, and I feel like, so for instance, one of the bits of pushback I get is, well, why are you going on about this genocide when there's loads of genocides going on in the world? Like, if you think about that, that's not a question, really.
Yeah.
It's an attempt to shut you down, to shut the conversation down.
Yeah.
And it also lets you know that the opposing side admits that they're committing genocide. It's just that they're wondering why you're not concerned with other genocides going on in the world, which is a really weird logical position to be at. So if the offense is going to come from somebody on the other side who's been swallowing lots of propaganda, I don't ever worry about offending them, because comedy, I think good satire has to be provocative. What I would be conscious of is, and this is the beauty of having Palestinians in my life, I suppose, at the very beginning of this conflict, I wondered, would it be appropriate to make comedy at all? Because this is this is probably the darkest hour, maybe other than the Nakba, that the Palestinians have been through. But time and time again, talking to friends, they're like, go and do it, because satire again has such an important role to play in undermining the propaganda. So they were happy for me to go ahead, and so I decided to go ahead. You get another funny thing, just to share, right, that people often accuse me of grifting. So they say you're just jumping on the Palestine thing to grift. Now, that's funny for two main reasons. One, I'm currently making a loss from the sketches that I'm making, because I'm paying to shoot them, right? But also, like, in the history of the world, nobody's ever, I don't think, made a living from being pro-Palestine. Like, it's always the other way around. Like, it usually affects your career. But yeah, so to answer your question, I'm always concerned with the people that I'm trying to support with my comedy, never with the people that I'm trying to attack. I think once you're punching up and not punching down, you're always going to be fine. And there's no greater enemy to punch up to, in my opinion, than the Israeli lobby.
That's nice. And you're right. Whoever is pro-Palestine, I'm sure you face that as soon as you post a video or anything through social media, your view will drop for like 70-80% now.
100%.
Yeah, you're right. Now, هل واجهت تحديات أو ردود أفعال سلبية لدعمك القضية الفلسطينية؟ Have you faced any challenges or negative reaction for openly support Palestinians throughout your comedy? And like, I'm sure you just mentioned one of the examples. And how did you handle this?
I think because for a while now I've been doing satire, and it's often contentious. I don't really see the position that I have a lot of the time. Basically, my position is kind of anti-colonial, and it's about bringing more awareness to the fact that, a lot of the world has been colonized, and there are colonizers in the world, and there are people within the countries that have been colonized that have this kind of thing. A friend of mine described it as colonized minds, where you're just kind of your thinking is shrouded, or your perception is shrouded from the fact that you have had this colonial experience, or your parents have had. So I don't see my material as being controversial. It's more like trying to provoke conversations that really need to take place. But I have been used to being attacked for a long time for doing that type of comedy, and it's definitely, again, a journey. At the start, I used to take everything personally, and I would get affected myself, and I'd be like, oh my God, they don't like me. And then after a while, you're like, well, if you're going to do this type of work, you got to put on your big boy pants, and you're going to get some nasty comments. And what I'm finding lately, for you may be interested in this, what I'm finding lately is the attacks that I'm getting are less about the material, and they're just personal attacks. And I think that's a good sign that you're winning the argument. I always find,
Absolutely. Yeah.
So at the beginning, people would say, oh, that's not true, or that's not quite the way that happened, or you're misrepresenting that aspect of the story. No, they're just straight out insulting me, like, just calling me bald, or there was one video recently where somebody called me fat and skinny in the same video. And I was like, well, both those things can't be true. So yeah. So look, I mean, in terms of work, there'll always be, I won't get offered some corporate gigs. I don't get offered paid partnerships, but like, I don't care. I really don't care about those kind of things. And I probably will. And I already have had opportunities from just being myself and being authentic. And I'm talking to people like you, and I'm doing lots of interesting media things. And that's probably means more to me than trying to get paid partnerships off Starbucks.
That's amazing. At least a clear conscience. You'll be comfortable. You can sleep in the night. And I am, as a Palestinian, very proud of what you're doing, and I'm really thankful for it. Let's see now. Besides the comedy, what other ways do you support the Palestinian cause?
So there's in Cork, there's a local Palestinian solidarity campaign group that I take part in. As I occasionally speak at some of the marches. I attend the marches, and we have a group meeting semi-regularly where there's a couple of different aspects to the group. Like there's a creative outlet, and there's people who are stronger with admin, and it's a real like little army, and they're extraordinary, and they don't get like I get lots of praise online and people telling me well done at them, and we've been marching every week for I think it's like 11 or 12 as many weeks as this current assault has been going on. We march through the city, and we regularly meet up as well and talk about different things we can do. So we've organized hunger strikes, and I say I'm a small part of this group. They're amazing, and as I was saying, I get praise online for doing sketches and stuff, but a lot of these people are incredible. They work full-time jobs. This is obviously all voluntary, and they organize. They're like a little army, constantly coming up with new creative ideas, and we're planning for as long as this assault goes on, but also beyond that, like our numbers are growing all the time as well in Cork. In Ireland, I have to say, that it's important for you to know as a Palestinian. I hope that this brings a tiny little bit of happiness, is that in Ireland you've got so much support, and we're kind of well organized as well, like you've got marches and solidarity campaigns in all little towns, even in Cork. And so I just try and lend as much as I can for amplifying Palestinian voices in the city and in Dublin. And one thing I'm going to do soon actually is there's a friend of mine called Habib who works in Cork, and he's from Gaza, and I'm going to do a podcast with him because I don't think we're hearing enough. We're hearing, certainly when I watch Al Jazeera, we're hearing people talk from a position of like academic or an expert or whatever, but ordinary, regular people from Gaza, I think we need to hear more of their voices in the Western media, in my opinion, just to give you a sense of what life is like there, was like there, and that this current assault, as horrific as it is, it's not something that's just come out of the blue, and that they were all, living in harmony before that. I mean, Gaza is an open-air prison, as you know, for as long as since the Israelis have withdrawn, which was supposed to be a positive move, and it's actually turned into a hellscape. So amplifying Palestinian voices and doing my little bit in our solidarity campaign, which thankfully is growing all the time, and we're in it for the long haul, and it's not just about this assault on Gaza, it's about Palestinian liberation and statehood and freedom and rights going forward.
هل لاحظت بإيرلندا بعد المظاهرات إنه صار في وعي أكثر على القضية الفلسطينية؟ So in Ireland, after the marching and all the support to Palestine have been going in the city, have you seen awareness spreading and understanding more of the Palestinian case between the Irish people?
Definitely. I feel like, again, and I'm gonna speak highly of my own country here, I think we always have been a bit of an outlier in Europe, because we understand the colonial experience, I think, in a way that most of the rest of Europe doesn't. But this particular assault has brought people into the conversation that never would have been in the conversation before. I find that ordinary people everywhere I go, if you go to the pub, if you go to matches, people are talking about it all the time. And I think you'll agree that the longer an assault goes on and the more media coverage of the assault there is, the more likely people are to understand Palestine and to be pro-Palestinian. And that's the conundrum that faces Israel, I think. The longer they proceed, the more people look into what's actually going on and the history, and then just by its very nature, you come to the side of understanding of Palestinians. So I think, to answer your question, Ireland has always had a strong understanding and empathy and support for Palestine, but it's now heightened to a point where ordinary people in the middle, I would say, who aren't really left-leaning, who are just trying to get on with their own lives, they all understand Palestine. Now, our marches have been consistently like really, really big numbers in a way that I don't think Irish people have ever marched for anything like this before. So yeah, I think pro-Palestinian support is on the rise, not just in Ireland, but all over the world.
ما هو التأثير الذي تأمل أن تحقق الكوميديا في زيادة الوعي حول الوضع في فلسطين? What impact do you hope your comedy will have on raising awareness about the Palestinian situation?
I have messages from people, particularly on Instagram, from Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Jordan, particularly, and all around the Middle East, that are saying that the stuff is resonating and keep going. That's more than I would have ever dreamed of, to be honest. I'm absolutely delighted with that. All I'm trying to do with my satire, I'm not a politician, I'm not an academic, I'm not an expert. I just want the satire to provoke conversations. And as we've been saying, if you see something and it resonates with you, you're more likely to go and do your own research then. And as soon as you go and do your own research, you're going to have that better understanding of Palestine. And I don't think it's possible to be a reasonable, rational human being and not agree that what's going on, particularly right now, is a grave, grave injustice and involves crimes against humanity. I don't think it's possible to not see it that way. So I see my satire as playing a small little role in provoking awareness and provoking those kind of conversations. And I'm very, very happy to play that part. And I think it's important to say again that I do this while consulting Palestinians to make sure that they believe that it's appropriate to do this kind of work. And I'm often guided on the materials, to the subject matters for sketches from Palestinians. And I've been lucky enough to have one of my Palestinian friends in one of the sketches. So it's in working in tandem with Palestinians. I suppose my hope is that my sketches can get people who couldn't care less about the struggle before to start actually just focusing in and seeing what's really going on, and then lending their support for the Palestinian cause.
Can you share a specific moment related to your support for Palestine that has significantly influenced your perspective? Yeah.
So a moment that affected my perspective, is it in recent times or at any stage?
Just in general.
Let me think.
No,
let me think. Yeah.
I just am saying in general.
Yeah. I think there was a few years ago, actually, I was in Belfast and there was a launch of a book. I think it's called Ireland and Palestine, A Shared Struggle. And it was from a Palestinian author whose name escapes me right now, but it was edited by a friend of mine called Danny Morrison. And I watched with interest. I attended the book launch with interest, but it was when I went away and read it afterwards, I realized that. So as I say, I'm an Irish Republican, and I would have read an awful lot about the hunger strikers, and I would have met some of the hunger strikers, and I was always aware of them as a kid, and I was aware that it was world news as well as a kid. You know, like that the Irish hunger strike as an Irish tool of resistance has been something that has brought us worldwide attention, and it in many stages over the course of the first of all the IRA campaign against what was called the TANs in 1921 period. You know, our own Cork, Terence McSweeney, his hunger strike was again world news, and Bobby Sands, in later times, is world news. What surprised me, I think, was that I didn't know about the Palestinian hunger strikers. I didn't know about them, and this book it goes 1-for-1. So there's an Irish hunger striker and a Palestinian hunger striker. And the parallels between the two are extraordinary. But I suppose the fact that I didn't know about them, and I would be a fairly keen reader of this kind of stuff, I didn't know that hunger strike was used as a Palestinian tool. And then I realized, I think, that the Palestinians just don't make the news. Certainly not in this part of the world in the way that the Irish would, because Irish are white. So we're more likely to make the news in America. It's more likely to resonate in America because we look a bit like Americans, whereas Palestinians don't. And I think at that point I realized that, yeah, we have a shared struggle, but the Palestinians have a much harder time getting any kind of legitimacy or any kind of airtime for their struggle in this part of the world because they're the wrong color.
هل في خطط مستقبلية تسمح بها الكوميديا وقضايا العدالة الاجتماعية فيما يتعلق بفلسطين؟ What are your future plans for using comedy to address social justice issues regarding Palestine?
Yeah, I feel like I've only just started, to be honest, because a lot of my sketches, they're real surface stuff. It's like the attacks on the basis of anti-Semitism and these kind of things are really at the surface. The deeper issues that I suppose dog Palestine that we don't hear about in the media over here at all. Like, for instance, I don't think there's any awareness that the Palestinian Authority don't have much support from Palestinians. Like, that's not an issue here at all. It's just assumed that everyone supports the Palestinian Authority and we just need to get them back in power and get Hamas out, which is what all the people want. They want to be liberated from Hamas. These kind of ridiculous narratives that go on here because, again, of that fundamental misunderstanding. Of course, I'm focused on Palestine right now, but going forward, I'd like to do sketches that deal with colonialism generally in the Middle East and around the world, because I think it's high time that the West confronts its colonial past in order to actually try and have some understanding going forward and to avoid these kind of endless wars that it's ended up in. So I see Palestine as being a massive part of an overall project of decolonization or decolonialism, which is what I'm interested in my comedy. So yeah, just keep an eye on my pages and whatnot, because I won't be relenting anytime soon, and I'm a lifelong ally for Palestine for anything that I can do, and that's a promise. Again, I think it's just making the supposedly complicated ordinary. That's satire at its very best. It upends the idea that this thing is very complicated. I think that's the type of satire that I grew up watching and loving, the likes of Chris Morris and other people like that. It's just to make this supposedly complicated thing very simple. So the sketches that work best for me, I think over the years, they've always been situations that's like, I did one before years ago on Brexit, for instance, and Brexit is supposed to be this massively complicated situation and all of these countries are involved and like what's going to happen. And I just brought it into a house share with all the countries in a house together, debating what's going to be the ramifications of this big decision they've made. So yeah, my job is to make stupid people like me understand supposedly complex situations.
To be honest, me as an audience for your videos, one of the audience, I've seen the video and I believe that you have reached that point and you managed to show the simplicity of the story and just break down the idea of it being very complicated. Because as a Palestinian, I watched it many times and I was like, yes, it is that simple. Basically, this is what
thank
it's
you. It's so lovely there.
اوكي هل هناك لحظات في الحديث عن فلسطين تبقى في ذاكرتك سواء كانت سيئة أم جيدة؟ Are there moments about talking about Palestine that really stick out to you, either good or bad?
I'll tell you a funny one maybe. So one of the sketches went crazy viral, and there was a woman purporting to be a Zionist witch sent me a long, detailed message on Instagram to say that because of the fact that I'm lying to the world about Palestine and its righteous cause, that she is going to put a curse on me, and that the curse is on now, and that I'm cursed. And so I just put it out on social media, and I mentioned it at a couple of things that I'd done or whatever. And I have had so many people undo that curse. So many like Muslim friends around the world have undone curses, and they've said they've given me blessings and stuff. And I've actually I know it's obviously there's a horrific thing going on in genocide, but going on in Gaza with regard to genocide. But me personally in my life, I actually feel kind of protected at the moment. I know it's kind of a strange thing to say, but I feel like I'm part of this. I became aware at that moment that there's a kind of a clan. Now, a lot of us are online, but there's Palestinians and Palestinian supporters. And I've met all these interesting people, and I feel like I'm part of a kind of a family, and it's actually a beautiful experience. So I went from being cursed to being blessed because of my support for Palestine. What would I like to do next? Is it?
I'll repeat the question to you. So what do you want to do next using your comedy to talk about fairness and injustice about Palestine? Your next plan.
Yeah. I'd like to keep making sketches, and I think we were talking before. I'd like to keep making sketches that would get deeper into the real tissue, the deeper tissue of the situation, because a lot of the stuff I've done so far has been quite surface, so that everyone can understand. And like the hot topics are, anti-Semitism. Everyone knows about Germany's support for this genocide, yet they created a genocide themselves. So like a lot of my topics are like everyone will understand them, but I'd like to progress into topics that not everyone understands, to bring awareness on that. And like one good example for that would be the Palestinian Authority's role in everyday Palestinians' lives. I think most people, if you talk to them here, will say, even in Ireland, will say, we just need to get Hamas out. That's what Israel is trying to do. Replace them with the Palestinian Authority and move forward. But of course, they don't understand that you can correct me here, but for over a decade, the Palestinian Authority has no meaningful role in Palestinian lives. They don't look to it as someone that can protect them. And actually, it's actually the contrary is true. So I want to go deeper with the sketches, but I'm also ambitious enough to kind of go maybe beyond social media. And can I expand it into a full satire show, TV, maybe documentaries, movies? I don't know. I'm interested in all those areas, but I want to bring my passion for Palestine, but particularly my passion for this idea of colonized minds and decolonizing minds. I want to bring that to as wide of an audience as I can. So if that's live shows and documentaries and TV stuff, then that would be amazing.
Thank you very much for being with us today. Me as a Palestinian, I thank you very much for all the efforts that you're doing to support our case and so thank you very much. I wish you all the best with your future plans.
Thank you.
And just have a good day, and thank you for the time that you gave us today.
You too. Keep in touch. Thank you so much. And anything I can do, just let me know.